It's 8 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for being here for the subcommittee on appropriations compensation. Senator Albers, if you would, open us up in prayer.
Please bow your heads. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for your provision of rain. Please give us your guidance, wisdom, and discernment to serve the people of our great state of Georgia. For it's in your most holy name we make our prayers. Amen.
Representative Hughley, if you would go up to the podium. I appreciate, first off, I want to thank you for coming for the third time. Our last meeting was a little emotional. I don't want that to happen again today. We're going to have cool heads today. I've met with Senator Sims, and we've had a good discussion. I have the utmost respect for everybody sitting around this table, and want to talk about this. Now, let me tell you what I have learned since I've had Ms. Holcomb do some research and look at really what the purpose of this committee is. And we have to look at the facts of the trial, but we don't need to be judge and jurors of really what happened. What we need to do is look if the state did anything in a situation where it's double jeopardy or anything like that. And I think that's what we really need to focus on this morning, is that. So I would ask Representative Hughley if you would be brief, but talk about whatever you'd like to speak about, and then we'll go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. We have two things that we need to talk about. First, we depend upon our justice system to keep us safe. It protects our families, homes, businesses, our community. And in the pursuit of fairness, the justice system is governed by rules of procedure to protect us as citizens so that each of us is treated fairly in judicial proceedings. When these rules are not followed, everyone loses. In this particular case, we have two things. Jakeith Robinson, according to the opinion of the Court of Appeals, was a victim of double jeopardy. And double jeopardy is not a technicality. It is granted to each of us that we are not to be victims of double jeopardy in the Fifth Amendment to our Constitution. So that is not trivial. This is something that was implemented in 1791 because the early settlers valued a person's liberty. And they said that a person's life, limb, and liberty should not be jeopardized twice for the same offense. And that is the nature of double jeopardy. And so the courts ruled that the lower court erred in allowing the prosecutor to use the same argument of party to a crime both times. And that is the basis of the double jeopardy. The second issue that we need to look at is the fact that the lower court gave him an interlocutory appeal. Mr. Robinson filed his paperwork in 2001, but it was not until 2014 before the court looked at his appeal. There is no reason, rhyme, or it was somebody's responsibility that works for the state of Georgia to docket the case. It did not happen. And there is no reason or rhyme for why that didn't happen. And the court admonished everyone involved that when these things happen, we cannot get justice for the victims of crime as well as our citizens who are accused of crimes. So for us as legislators, the courts have already looked at the facts of the case. Our responsibility is to see what the state of Georgia needs to do in terms of trying to rectify what went wrong in this particular instance. So with that, Mr. Chair, I hope that's brief enough, and I'll be happy to yield for questions.
Well, first off, we'll entertain any questions from the committee. Anybody have any questions? Okay, I'm going to go around to the committee members. Senator Watson, do you have anything? Any questions, any comments? Senator Harper, questions or comments? Senator Albers, questions, comments? Is it three?
Yes, I think so. Well, I'm not sure what it is.
I don't even know what it is. I'm going to light them all up.
I'm going to defer to some of what Senator Robertson has. I've got some concerns. First off, we have to find something to do with the folks in the state who did not do their job and do it right, and they have to be held accountable, just like the case we heard what Senator Watson was bringing up with district attorney and police folks. If somebody does something wrong, I don't care where they sit, we have to find a way to hold those people accountable too, right? Because they, in this case, either broke the law or in some cases irreparably, harm people's lives. My concern, though, and this is the one I still have, is did this man drive the getaway car, right? And if he did, there's a difference between serving time and compensating for it. And I want to know really what happened with the crime, because that is paramount to this. If the man is completely innocent, then absolutely, we ought to do that right. But if he was driving that car, right, then we have to think about who's the real victim. Well, the victim would be the man who was shot and killed, the husband, the father, right? So I'm still struggling with trying to figure out what really happened there. The double jeopardy is 100% wrong. I could not agree with you more, and I want to go after those folks, but I also want to see, was there actually a crime committed?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Davenport?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hadn't planned to say anything, but I want to make sure that justice is served here, and I want to make sure that we understand that members on this committee and off this committee, as senators in the state of Georgia, we are not the judge and jury. Just because of the color of our skin, we cannot just say that we think someone is guilty or innocent. That's not our job. I think that our job is to apply the law here.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sims, any comments? Okay. Senator C, any comments?
I'm just going to echo what my colleague just said. If we're not the judge and jury, we just need to compensate the time that was actually taken from Lord and given home.
Okay. All right. Is there any other comments from any of the committee members before we take action? Okay. I will entertain a motion.
Well, I think, what about Randy?
Do you not want me to speak?
Well, you spoke last meeting. This was not, we weren't going to have any testimony from anybody other than the sponsor of the bill. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, yeah, and because I was notified of the meeting is the only reason, and to clear a couple of things up.
Okay.
First of all, Representative Hughley and I have been friends for a long time. Me finding out that the meeting was occurring and what the purpose of the meeting was about.
Speak into the microphone, please.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Me finding out that this was happening the day before it was happening the last time was the reason I rushed in here when I did. And I think she knows my personality. She knows me. I'm not aware of any issue we've ever had, but there's words used in here such as victim and justice and all this other terminology from members of the committee. And the case that Mr. Robinson's, the technicality that Mr. Robinson was released on came out of a court case that actually came out of 1974. It was usually primarily a civil matter, but it had been moved over into the criminal side and dealt with using the same circumstances in retrials, because Mr. Robinson was acquitted of some of the serious charges in the first trial, and then in the second trial, which was enjoined with the second shooter, Mr. Womack, he was only charged with the charges of that the jury was hung on in his first trial. And so what the court decided was, after they discovered that the court itself, far up the chain outside of the Chattahoochee Circuit, had failed to docket the case, that for over 10 years, was the fact that it could possibly be double jeopardy underneath because of the circumstances described in the second trial that were the same as the circumstances in the first trial, but not for the same charges. But what we have here is we have facts. Mr. Robinson's girlfriend, his co-defendants, admitted and testified that Mr. Robinson, along with Leon Tollett and Xavier Womack, planned to rob an armored car. They did, in fact, carry out that robbery in where Mr. Tollett walked up behind the armored car driver 4 days before Christmas in 1995 and shot him in the back of the head twice, shot him in the back twice, and shot him 2 more times. And then engaged with the other security guards in a gun battle along with Xavier Womack. While Mr. Robinson waited in a blue Mustang sitting on the corner, Mr. Womack went and jumped in the blue Mustang. Mr. Robinson and Mr. Womack got away. Mr. Robinson took the blue Mustang over to Phoenix City, Alabama, and hid it in a yard. Eventually, he was found out. And again, upon interview with the shooter and with Mr. Robinson's girlfriend, Mr. Robinson admitted to his girlfriend that he had participated in an armed robbery and that Mr. Tollett had in fact murdered one of the security guards. I understand if a district attorney hides evidence and sends an innocent man or woman to prison. I understand if law enforcement intentionally or because of not doing their job lead to an innocent person being sent to prison. I would be first in line to make sure that person's compensated. Mr. Robinson is not innocent of the crime he committed. Mr. Robinson's 3 daughters and grandchildren have grown up without him. Because of the actions of Jakeith Robinson and his co-defendants. If this committee chooses to do that, then I respect the committee's choice. I think probably the most disappointing fact, and I've not heard the representative say it at all, she's been straightforward and forthright with bringing this resolution here. But those that I hear that inject skin color or race into this case at all are being disingenuous, and I truly believe that causing more damage than doing anything to move forward with race relations in this state, especially with law enforcement, where all races work together each and every day and do a lot for the state of Georgia. But I will say this, I think it would be an absolute travesty if we were to give this gentleman any compensation after a jury of his peers convicted him based on evidence from his friends, co-defendants, and child's mother, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he in fact participated in the murder of Mr. Hamilton. And so, Mr. Chair, with that, I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate what you've done for law enforcement over the years, and respect that.
Mr. Chair.
What we're going to do is we're going to,
May I
yes, and
speak?
then I'm going to entertain a motion.
When you look at the opinion that was put down by the courts, if this was clearly a open and shut case, he would have gotten convicted the first time. He would have gotten convicted the first time if this was as he says. The record does not give us that.
Okay.
The opinions of the court does not give us that. And I have the record just like you do. I have it's a big stack. But what was presented in court does not comport with what you're saying. If so, the opinion of the Court of Appeals would have identified that, and they would not have overturned this conviction. So, I mean, it's hard for us to think that somebody was brought into court and he was obviously guilty, and they would not convict him.
Listen, these are tough decisions to make, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to vote on this right now.
Thank you.
Yes. Senator Harper, what mic, is that 2?
2.
Yes.
I want to say I agree with Senator Albers and some of the comments he made in regards to holding individuals accountable in the judiciary system, especially those that fail to do their job, because a lot of times I think there's failures in the system that unfortunately cause individuals to be overlooked, or cases to be handled in a way that they should not have been, individuals that are innocent that end up serving time, and you know, over time when those cases arise, whether it's forensic evidence or whatever it is, we see opportunity for where those individuals can be set free. That said, Mr. Chairman, I think one of the things this legislature needs to look at is maybe an independent commission to look at these type of cases because they get very complicated.
I do-
That was going to be the suggestion I was going to make. I'll hold my comments any further than that.
Okay.
I really believe that this General Assembly may need to look at that going forward because I think it's hard for us as members to dive off into the details of these and understand the merits of the cases and make an informed, well-informed decision. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make that recommendation
Okay.
that we look at that going forward.
We will look at that going forward. I appreciate your comments.
Yes, sir.
We have before us House Resolution 29, LC 345726. I'll entertain a motion. I'm sorry?
I make the motion that we take the vote on,
Do pass? Do I have a second?
second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. All against, raise your hand. Okay, I'll be the tiebreaker, and I'll vote in favor of this moving forward, so it's 4-3. And we will recommend this to the Appropriations Committee.
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Mr.
Appreciate y'all's
Chairman.
time. We are adjourned.